Welcome to Elemental Whispers podcast. This is Diamira Rose, your host, and today we have another installment of Pearls of Enchantment. Now, if you're new to this show, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy the conversations that I bring to you in this space. Elemental Whispers podcast is the medicine of enchantment. It's about blessing the human heart through the vibration of nature, of the enchantment that flows from the heart of nature, which feeds us at a soul level. So many of us are starved. We need nourishment. Of course, we see that reflected physically, right? So many of the foods that are available to us have been stripped of their nutrients. And this is also reflected at a non-physical level where we are starved at a soul level. We are missing that nourishment that often comes with remembering ourselves, with being rooted in a sense of belonging. And that can so easily be reflected to us through that which is all around us, rooted in its own belonging, which is the frequency of nature. Now, Pearls of Enchantment is a show within a show. It is a collaboration between my dear sister, Alexandria Sciarappa, and myself, where we have enriching conversations about beauty, enchantment, flower essences, the medicine of nature, and really the mysteries of life. We think of them as a sort of tea time where you can sit with us like a butterfly on the wall and grab a cup of tea and be uplifted and expanded into new ways of thinking, allowing your heart to open and for new perspectives to perhaps expand your consciousness. On today's show, Alex and I discuss flower essences, what they are, why you might want to work with them, how they are the medicines of the now, and we talk as much as possible in practical terms while also bringing in the poetic mystery of this particular kind of medicine. So if you have ever wanted to know more about flower essences, or if you just would love a conversation that might expand your heart and open your mind around the generosity of nature, then you are in for a special treat today. At the end of today's episode, we will share about how you can find us, current offerings that we have available, and ways of working with us. I hope you enjoy diving into the world of flower essences and to allowing their magic, their medicine, and wisdom to bathe you. May flower and forest blessings abound in your life. Today, we want to talk about and demystify flower essences and make them more approachable and accessible for everyone. Nature in general is truly the bridge back to our soul, back to our connection, and back to the home of our own heart. In a world of constant volatility, turmoil, not knowing what's going to unfold from one day to the next, if we're waiting for the outer to slow down and hit the pause button, we're going to be waiting for a long time. And so it's up to us to take responsibility as co-creators of this dream called planet Earth and find our own center, find our anchor and our compass in this wild storm of transformation that we are all journeying right now. And it's actually the message that I feel both Alex and I want to bring forward is one of hope, one of light, one of joy, and one of very great optimism in terms of the generous gifts that nature has to offer us and how these gifts can actually be medicine for our soul, for our spirit, for our emotions. So, the way that this episode came about was because we realized that flower essences are not perhaps as understood as we thought they were. And that, for me, is a great shame because they are so user friendly and they truly are the medicine of the now. And so we're going to go into what we've been experiencing, what we've come up against, and how we come to these separate but also similar conclusions that flower essences are not as well known as we thought.
I'm so excited to be here. We've done so many various podcasts together, and we've never really spoken about flower. That is such a central foundation and cornerstone of both of our work. And I think the main thing that I want to speak is just how accessible flower essences are. And I'm hoping that this talk helps people to understand more what they are so that it does demystify so they can see how accessible they actually are. Because one thing that I find about flower essences is they are beautiful medicine that can attune us back to our own heart so quickly and so swiftly in such easeful ways that they work so well with accompanying other things that you're working with, whether you're seeing another practitioner or any of the own inner work you're doing, or even like a yoga practice, whatever practices you're doing, they help to elevate those to other octaves. And it's really this beautiful medicine of yourself and this a co-weaving between nature and yourself. But they really help you attune to your heart so that you can figure out what's best for you and you really come into your own heart discernment. And that's what I've really found is they really help to illuminate your own inner heart lantern so that you can find your own path instead of always searching on the outside for what your path is.
Yes, beautifully stated. I feel like we should begin with the what. What are flower essences? One of the things that Alex and I have both run up against is that when we ask people if they know what flower essences are, almost always people will say yes, but that is because they are confusing flower essences with either essential oils, which is the most common conflation, or they're confusing flower essences with tinctures, plant extracts. Flower essences are neither one of those. I feel like this is where it becomes a little bit difficult to talk about flower essences. It's easier to talk about the experience that flower essences bring to us, it's how flower essences work with us, how they make us feel, why we would want to work with them, than it is to actually state what they are. And the reason is because they fall somewhere between energy or vibrational medicine, spirit medicine, and plant medicine. If you put those three things on a triangle, flower essences would be at the center of that triangle. So, to be very clear, they are not physical. Of course, they are physically preserved. So, there is an actual physical liquid that you are able to take, generally ingested. However, the liquid is only the substrate. It's only the carrier of what is the medicine itself. And the medicine itself is not physical. It is purely vibrational. It is purely spirit. It is the imprint or pattern of the spirit song of the plant. That's the way I've always described them. And I'd love to hear, Alex, how you tend to describe what flower essences are exactly.
I think this is something that I similarly can struggle with. I love the heart song of the plant. Essences are stepping into a mystery. And so how do you describe mysteries? They're a mystery keeping and they have gates. And when you open that threshold into a mystery keeping, anyone who's walking it a mystery path or sacred mysteries, they're going to all experience something different. And so, how do you overarchingly explain that? I generally describe them as vibrational medicine that can help attune you to your heart. But even with that, people are then just kind of lost. They can easily be like, "Oh, I love the bottle. Let me see it. Let me see how they smell." And I'm like, "No, no, no. They don't. Listen, like they're not essential oils." And so when you're stepping into mystery keeping, it really is your own experience. Like you have to experience it to understand what flower essences are. And I think that's the best way to actually understand what it is. And so that's why people who are stepping into flower essences and they've said yes, they are ready to experience that because the fact that they've said yes to a mystery, that means that they're ready to step into that. So I also will sometimes explain that water is like a record keeper and that the water has been programmed or with a record of the plant medicine. That it's kind of like talking about like how a CD or a record is programmed with a song and that how that bottle is holding that song or that record of that medicine that the plant carries. So some people can kind of conceptually understand that, but that's why I like to work with people for 3 months because then that's when people can really land into understanding what flower essences are.
Yeah, and it's not that you have to be advanced level to understand or even have to understand flower essences at the level that we do to work with them at all, but you certainly have to be willing to be open-hearted, to be open-minded, and to not have expectations because this is the piece and how the spirit component weaves in of this medicine. This medicine is, as I said, at one layer, it is spirit medicine. And with spirit medicine, like Alex said, you're stepping into the mystery. You are letting go of expectations and you're allowing the spirit of, in this case, this plant to journey you. And you're allowing great spirit to journey you. And it's not that spirit is not always talking to us, working with us, working through us. But when we make that conscious choice to step into a co creative relationship, a healing journey with this plant, with a flower essence, with this particular kind of medicine, we are actually opening a door and stepping across a threshold. And that gives spirit more permission to support us, to clear, to heal, to resolve, to bring forward, to illuminate. The other thing that I think is important to mention is flower essences. I find that they have their own intelligence built into them so that they are able to modulate the experience based on the level of consciousness and also the stability of the person who's working with them. So, this is really good because sometimes when we're working with a practitioner administering some form of healing, ideally they are working in co creative partnership with spirit, but there's a fine line between when to push somebody, when to give a gentle nudge versus when to just hold space and back off because they are in a process or any more pushing and that will tip them over the edge. Whereas when we're working with flower essences, we don't have to guess because the essences have that innate intelligence that is able to curate and modulate the journey. And of course, it comes with also working with a good practitioner and having that container set for the person who's journeying it. And then, just like with any medicine or modality, there's a lot of different ways that it is being practiced. And there is a million different practitioners, and each one works in a very different way. And I think that it's really common if people do know about flower essences, they know about the Bach flower remedies. I find that the Bach apothecary, there are benefits, and then there are things that I find as advantageous. I find that they are limited in a lot of ways and also sometimes have created a certain idea about flower essences. And a lot of us have broken free. Like sometimes you have a blueprint And then when you embody the blueprint and you work with it so deeply, then you're given permission to break free and allow the medicine to be you. And then we work with it in different ways. And so there have been many generations of practitioners and systems of healing since Bach. There are other ways of working with flower essences that are just as powerful, if not even a little bit more aligned for the times that we are in now. But I'd love to hear what you think about them, Alex.
Most people, when they encounter flower essences, how they first have encountered them is through Dr. Edward Bach's flower essences. And you probably see them at a health food store. The main one that people see is Rescue Remedy with a yellow label, which is considered a 5-flower formula. And it to be worked with when you're in crisis or traveling. That's actually how I first came to flower essences. Back in like 2001, I saw them in a local little health food store in San Francisco in North Beach. And it was at the front when I was about to leave. And I saw it said a Rescue Remedy. And I was like, what are these? And I picked them up. And the next day I was flying out on a plane. And I just can get nervous flying. I don't have a huge fear, but I just got nervous, like being around the big crowd and going through security. And so I took them with me. They were the little pastels that you like put in your mouth, these little gummies. And they were super helpful for me, whether it was a placebo or not. I just really loved them. They were like my gateway in. So a lot of times Bach essences are people's gateway in because it's the only thing they're really exposed to. But like, here's my Cliff Note points. Bach, he was a doctor in the early 1900s, and he was very successful at his career. He then became a homeopath, also very successful. And then he left all of that to find a system of healing that was even more gentle than homeopathy. And he did not discover flower essences. Flower essences have been around for thousands and thousands of years. It's indigenous plant medicine. The original flower essences are the dew on plants in the morning. Medicine people would, shamans, healers, curanderas, they would say go out and drink the dew off of the flower in the morning. They give a specific flower or bathe with certain flowers. So flower and water have been around for eons. This is not some new thing, but Bach found a way to stabilize them. And he found that if he stabilized them with brandy, the solarized water from a plant with brandy, and then gave them to people following a similar method of homeopathy, that people were having these epic transformations. And in such a gentle, easeful way. I really tip my hat to Bach because he really was ahead of his time and such a genius. And there are so many beautiful things that he did. He only created 38 flowers in his apothecary because he passed away before he was able to do more. And it's a beautiful set. I think it's a beautiful thing to have at your home if you want to just be able to serve your family. But I find that his essences, they were created during a time of deep suffering on the planet, darkness, there was war. And I find that they treat lots of very 3D things that are going on for people. So I love working with them when people are brand new to flower essences. And they're just like, I just can't stay focused in my day to day, or, I'm having such a hard time. Like my heart is just so heavy with this one thing that's repeating, like these kind of like darker energy loopings that people can have in the 3D. I find that they can make really great formulas for people when they're brand new to flower essences. But beyond that, there's been so many other apothecaries that have expanded outside of that because our whole planet is an apothecary. Our whole planet is a great library of flowers that are just wanting us to step into their story medicine and to live out this mythic, beautiful story that we get to co-weave with spirit. And so it's not just these limited, 38, these other apothecaries that have extended beyond. There are so many flowers that have called out their song to different apothecary creators that have collected their essences that bring a different octave of medicine. And there's certain flower essences that I would never work with a brand new client, even if they've been working with flower essences for a long time. Maybe in our second meeting, I might do that. But people who are brand new, I love starting with Bach. The other thing I do want to mention, though, is that the Bach's flower essences you see in a store are not made in the original way that Bach intended them to be. That company had bought out the Bach company. So they're now made in machine processed And I'm not trying to poo-poo the Bach the company. I've seen clients actually have beautiful transformations with the essences bought in a store from the Bach company. But there is a man, Julian, I'm blanking on his last name, Bernard, who has a company called Healing Herbs. And he is a lineage carrier of Bach. He's like the fourth generation down. And he weaves the Bach essences in the form that Bach intended them to be woven. And you can actually get those Bach essences through Flower Essence Society. And they're called Healing Herbs. And that's where I usually recommend people to go, just because I love supporting small local apothecary makers. And I also, if there's a lineage involved, I love supporting someone who is weaving with that lineage.
There's two things that I want to circle back to clarify for people. So, number one, when we say apothecary, I know that word trips people up. It brings people back into medieval times. What are they talking about? Apothecary? Are they going to these apothecary stores? What are they talking about? I just want to demystify apothecary for everyone. All we mean is a flower essence collection. It's just a flower essence catalog. It's a catalog of which specific flower essences. And so when Alex said he only made 38, that means that there were 38 different kinds of flowers / plants / trees that he actually collected, made into an essence, and studied and worked with clinically in his clinic, in his healing practice with clients, and had documented notes on that he would then work with with people. And those are the 38 that became the standard Bach flower remedies. So that's what is meant by an apothecary. And obviously, there are also these other flower essence producers all over the world. And some apothecaries are massive and have hundreds of flower essences. And it can be very overwhelming. And that's also why, without working with a practitioner, sometimes it's easier and more accessible to begin with Bach if you're not working with a practitioner. Because the other thing that Bach is known for is, like Alex was talking about with 3D issues, when you go into the store, on the bottle itself literally says 2 or 3 words of what it's for. And so it might say, be in control, or it might say, forgive mistakes, or whatever. Easy to understand of how they can be applied to something that you are dealing with in every day. And where the missing piece in this, and where you can go a lot deeper with a practitioner, certainly, is that, you might feel out of control. But the question is always why? Why? What is going on? Are you just going through something and so you need a little bit of grounding? Because, we all go through periods of time where it's a lot. And that can be one reason. Or is there something else going on? Is there some other belief or pattern that's playing out in your life? Are you always feeling like you're out of control? Are you feeling like you're out of control every fall season? Okay, so what is being triggered for you in the fall season that makes you feel like you're out of control? And this is where you start doing these deep dives and you understand people's history, and you can get really deep and really specific when you pull back the layers and trace some of these root causes of what's going on. And so what I love and honor and acknowledge Bach for is because, he was working as a regular medical doc, then homeopath, and then the question he was asking, it was, people are having success, and yet there's a piece that's not actually being addressed, or they're getting sick again, or. So what's underneath it? And so for him, he went to the emotional layer and realized that all disease had an emotional component. And that is 100% true. And then there's even like this deeper layer of, yes, it's emotional, but it's not just our day-to-day emotions. It's something more deep-seated. There's usually a belief or a pattern that can trace back to early childhood, that can trace back ancestrally, right? Epigenetics has proven that we hold ancestral trauma in our bodies. And it can also trace back to other lifetimes and other incarnations. And so all of that obviously takes a very skilled flower detective, i.e., a flower essence practitioner, to really understand and trace those patterns. But that doesn't mean that the person who is not working with a practitioner cannot work with essences. I would just, again, you're going to want to be working at this more surface level of, do I need to feel a little bit calmer? Do I need to feel inner peace or whatever other small, easy, more accessible ways of understanding that certainly Bach provides?
I really do feel that people can work solo with flower essences, but it requires deep devotion and discipline on their end. And when you work with a practitioner, you've paid money and there is accountability, and then there's also a guide that's showing you. But if you wanted to work with flower essences solo, you 100% could. You just have to be devoted and show up and be disciplined. And you would want to give yourself consistently working with flower essences, probably 3 to 6 months. You will see effects immediately. But sometimes, a lot of times, these effects are very minor. They're like a 2-degree shift that can completely change your trajectory. And a lot of times people don't notice the changes that are happening. So it's great to have someone that can reflect the changes that are happening. But I do think that you can work with them solo. I would say 3 to 6 months. What happens is that you start to become attuned. So you might start to come back more into your heart and feeling more uplifted, or things might just start to shift or change. And then it will draw people into your field that you might need or are yearning for to help with whatever healing that needs to come unfold. So I think a lot of times it can look very mysterious and magical, and you may not even recognize it. But I do think that people can work with them solo. I don't think you have to have a practitioner, but I think it takes a lot of discipline and devotion to do that at the beginning.
I 100% agree. It just depends on what you're looking for, what level of experience you want to have. Everyone can work with flower essences. That's what's so amazing about it. Literally, a teenager, honestly, a 16-year-old that's feeling stressed out can walk into a health food store, buy a Bach essence off the counter, and they would get some relief. And what's so accessible and safe is that there is no physical plant constituent in the actual essence. It's purely vibrational, purely energy, purely spirit medicine. And therefore, if you take it and it's not going to be felt at the physical level, and even if you drink half a bottle, aside from having drunk again, like diluted shot of whiskey, you're not going to hurt yourself or have any kind of reaction that you could have if you were taking some sort of plant tincture or herbal tincture without having a full understanding of what is this herbal action? What does it do at the physical level? These are not working at the physical level. They're working at the emotional, spiritual, and soul level. And of course, then we may have results at the physical level because it all is connected and trickles down. But that's what's really important, is that 16-year-old can walk in, have it, and, they can get some relief. And so can any of you out there. Any single person can, and I'm saying Bach because they're in all the grocery stores, but you can order from any apothecary what feels aligned for you. You can do that on your own. And if you're going through a transition in life, if you're going through something very deep and you are wanting to shift, if you are wanting to change, there is a behavior or pattern that you are noticing that you have been doing for a long time and you were ready to break free of it. If there is any kind of deeper work that you're wanting to do, that's the kind of thing where you are going to want a practitioner for a million different reasons. One, as Alex was talking about, that reflection of just being able to reflect to you where you are and how you're going, because that on a journey, sometimes you're in the darkness on a journey, and for somebody to just reflect to you and give you that little light of here's look at how far you've come. That can be a game changer. But also, in addition to that, to be able to fine tune a formula, because what you're going to be buying in apothecaries are a single essence. I do not recommend anybody to be formulating willy nilly, to be formulating just haphazardly. If you don't know what you're doing, if you're not a trained practitioner, no formulation. They do have some formulas out there. There are certain companies that will sell formulas for certain things. So there are formulas available for you. I just wouldn't recommend you formulating. So either you're going to be buying a single essence of like oak tree or rose, or you're going to be buying an already pre-made formulation for you. And then if you want some deeper support and you really want to be held and a formula to be customized and fine-tuned to support you to unravel patterns that are keeping you stuck in a certain place and be able to break through into your next level of consciousness, maybe even more gracefully than you would on your own, that's where a practitioner comes in. And to work with some of the deeper medicines that are going to really get in there and do a little bit of scouring or do a little bit of clearing or bringing forward to unhook and resolve some of those deeper mother wound, father wound, ancestral trauma. You don't want to do that by yourself. Alex may have a completely different perspective, but that's how I feel about the different levels of being able to work with flower essences.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you're saying. I will add the caveat with like in my practice, there are some clients that are just really grooving with flower essences. And when I feel that, then I often will encourage them to weave their own formulas under us working together. Like, ooh, okay, because I do find that there's something really beautiful in making your own medicine and its own activation occurs. And so there are certain clients that I definitely will encourage to weave their own formula, even if it's just two flowers together, because it's such an accessible medicine in the sense that I also think that all of our lineages have worked with plants and flowers in the past. And so there's something beautiful about when you start to work and take more ownership and you're not just always going to go see a practitioner. There's something that starts to happen. There's a different light that turns on and illuminates in someone's field. There's this other doorway that opens and they can then see. And then I'll get, emails from them like, okay, I'm thinking of doing this one and this one. I'm like, okay, those sound great. Go for it. That's just kind of opened up for me in my practice this year that I am really enjoying. But that doesn't happen with all my clients, but I would say a handful.
And then I do want to bring in this other layer of working, which circles back to what you were originally saying with this requirement of devotion and commitment. Going back to the teenager that grabs a bottle of rescue remedy off the shelf, she's not going to be devoted and committed. Let's face it. She doesn't even know what that means. But she is going to be able to take it and probably experience some form of relief. And that may have an impact on her. However, I do want to bring in this other less common way of working with flower essences that you work with a lot with other people. And that is at the level of the flower journey. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's my all-time passion and favorite thing is to work with flower essences at the spirit journey level.
So, what is a flower journey?
Flower essence journey is stepping into the spirit realms and walking and co-weaving with a flower spirit.
And what does that look like for someone?
It looks like magic, wondrous awe, joy, illuminated heart, beauty that showers upon you at every step, and an epiphany realizing that you are not alone and that you are here weaving with spirit all the time and that the magic beauty realms exist around you at all times.
And at the 3D level, what is required?
The 3D level requirement is to be open, curious, and have initiation and show up and actually do it.
But like, what is the time frame? What is somebody doing in that time frame? And how does it differ from taking flower essences in the way that we've just described?
The time frame can typically be 7 days to a month long. I would say 7 days is the most easeful for most people living in the day-to-day realms. A month that takes a lot of energy and a lot of devotion. But all my flower journeys that I do in my practice are currently 7 days. And what that means is that you're working with one particular flower essence and flower spirit. And I journey with that person over 7 days. So they're ingesting or spraying flower essences over them or taking them by mouth 3 to 5 times a day. And I'm also doing the same on my end. And we're then weaving back and forth through voice notes and text messages. So there's a transmission, almost as if you're like going on a hike with someone and you're walking with someone and you're like, oh, look over there, the flowers. Oh my gosh, a snake just crossed in front of our path. Oh, this just happened. Oh, wow, now it's sprinkling. Is it going to start to rain? So you're kind of walking with someone down a path. And even though I may have been on this path numerous times, AKA worked with this one flower numerous times, it's always a different, just like if you go on the same hike over and over, it's always different every time with how it unfolds. It's the same with flower essences. They remind me, flower essences and working with the spirit of flower essences and the spirit of flowers remind me of fairy tales. You open them up and they're story medicine. One person might completely perceive and interpret the story completely different than someone else who's hearing it live in the exact same time. You do this with children. When you read them stories, they all will receive the medicine differently. And sometimes a story might really affect you. And that's what it feels like when I'm weaving and working with people with flower spirit.
And why might they choose to do a flower journey versus just working with a practitioner and for that practitioner to co-create them a, you know, basic formula?
So I worked with clients for a long time, um, listening to them speak, for an hour on the phone, whatever's challenges they're going through, what they're wanting to call more into their life. And then I'd weave them a formula and off I would send it. And I started to notice that there wasn't this deeper connecting in to the magic and beauty that flower essences have to offer. And I started to really think about this, like, why is this? Some people would get that, but other people weren't really getting that. They were having amazing results. Like people were having amazing life transformation results, but they just weren't really understanding or stepping into all the magic that was around them that they could access at any point. And I started to really think about this, and somehow it unfolded that I started doing these working solo with one flower. And it was probably because I started working with cacao solo and working with the flower essence of cacao solo. And I started to see how much medicine started to unfold. And I started to wonder, I wonder if you do this with a client, if they will start to have this unlocking that happens within them around the magic and the beauty that always exists around them in the spirit realms. Because it's kind of like when you're working with a formula, it's like listening to an orchestra. You listen to all the music. Can you really pick out the bass notes? If you're someone who's a musical person, you have training in that, sure, you can. Like I used to play the French horn. When I'm listening to an orchestra, I can pick out the French horn. I know exactly where it is because my ear is attuned to that. But if you're not attuned to how flowers all work together, it's really hard to pick that out. So if you start working with one flower, aka one musical instrument, one vibrational attunement, then you have a guide. At least you now have a guide. At least you now have a friend or an ally that you can tap into. And I started to see that clients, when they started to do this, what happened is they started to unlock their flower spirit language for themselves. They started to be able to unlock the symbolism, the omens, you might say, they started to decode the spirit world around them because they were living this 7-day almost mythic story of what was happening, but also as an embodied experience. They started to see, oh my gosh, it's actually everywhere. It's so weird. I'm journeying with sunflower spirit, and I showed up to my office and someone brought me sunflowers, and they started to make the connection. oh, that's not just someone bringing me sunflowers. Like the spirit realms weave in these beautiful, unexplained, mysterious ways. They started to actually embody, experience that. And I started to see that people became more confident and more inspired by life. And that's really what I wanted is I'm always looking for how can people be inspired by their lives? How can they be inspired by all the beauty that does exist around them? And then after that, weaving an integration formula where there might be multiple flowers in a formula to anchor that experience in for the next month. And I'm just noticing that that is really elevating people's experiences with working with flower essences and giving people more confident, like this is everyone's medicine.
Yeah, I do feel like working with a flower or plant in this way, in this journey form, is truly an initiation. It truly does pull back the veil and invite somebody in to the heart story of the earth that is speaking to us all the time, but it gives them that permission to truly become present to that living magic. And and so it actually invites people into their own co-creator nature, their own co-participatory nature with nature. When I was working with clients, I would notice this sticking point as well, that they wouldn't fully grasp, I don't mean grasp mentally, but grasp in their hearts what the magic of this flower essence formula bottle and the possibility and the potency. And so what would happen is, yes, there'd be these unfoldings happening within their life, but they weren't making the connections. And it was almost as if the music got turned on louder, but they still couldn't hear it, or they still weren't listening and making the connection that, oh, wow, that music's actually playing for me. And that's the flower spirits that I've actually committed to working with. So many people would think that the big medicine was our session that we would have together, and yet the actual big medicine is that month that you would journey with that formula after the session, where the spirits would support you and truly bless you with the medicine. But you have to be aware, otherwise, and again, anybody can work with flower essences at any level, but the more present you are, the more awake and aware you are. And we're not talking about higher or lower consciousness. We're just actually talking about being present to life. So many people are racing through life. They don't stop to acknowledge what Alex is referring to as the beauty. They don't stop to acknowledge the blessings. We're all guilty of this. I'll give everybody an example. I was just in a wedding, and at the end of the wedding, they had all these flowers that they didn't know what to do with, and were going to be thrown away. And so I became the flower rescuer. Thankfully, my partner and I both had our cars there. And so we filled our cars to the brim with flowers from both the rehearsal dinner and from the wedding itself. Ooh, bouquets and huge centerpieces that take up half of my dining room table of flowers. And I got home and I put them all around my house. They're spilling everywhere. They're on tables, they're on dressers, they're in one is just taking up my entire garden tub because it's so large and it's underneath the ferns and it looks so beautiful in there. I was in flower heaven and I'm hopping around the house like a flower maiden, reveling in the flower glory. But it took Alex to point out to me, she said, "You just reached out to me and asked if we wanted to do this flower essence episode." And she said, of course you would want to do a flower essence episode. The flowers are in your face talking to you, whispering their secrets. Talk about us. It's time for us to be on stage." And she reflected it as, what a blessing. Look at how you are being loved up by the flower realm. And even though I had been delighted and loved it, I hadn't actually opened my eyes to see it as the blessing that it was, of how I was being blessed with this flower abundance. And so this is the point that I'm trying to make with this story, is that we sometimes don't make those connections. And both of us are two people who are used to being detectives and seeing, reading the symbols and the signs that the universe is constantly speaking to us, reading and understanding the language of the earth and the language of spirit. We're both used to it. And even for us, we tend to sometimes not see it because we get busy or inundated, and it takes somebody else to reflect that to us. So this is the kind of thing, the structure that Alex has created with these flower journeys, is that it it truly does open up. I'm not going to say it opens up somebody's senses any more than working with flower essences does in any other way. What it does is it makes people slow down and truly open their eyes, as if they're opening their eyes from within the story. And this container creates that opportunity for people. Yeah, so we have touched on what flower essences are, why we may want to work with flower essences, and the different levels of working with them, and how flower essences really are approachable and user friendly. We're going to test everyone now. Okay, quiz time. Flower essences are essential oils. True or false? False. Very good. Flower essences have a scent of the flowers that they are made from. False. Flower essences have the physical plant matter or constituent in them. False. Flower essences work like herbal medicine, and we should know their herbal actions and what they do for us on a physical level.
False.
Very good. I hope you all got that out there, and that you got 100% on this. If not, go back, re-listen to the episode, please. Um, so they're not essential oils. They're not plant tinctures, and those are beautiful medicines, and we're not saying that we don't work with those ourselves. However, they're not flower essences, and you work with them very differently. It's a completely different ball game when working with other forms of plant medicines. Flower essences really teeter in that liminal place between plant medicine, spirit medicine, and energy medicine.
The only other piece I want to speak to is when it comes to who might work with flower essences. I just really feel like everyone. Because as a mother who homeschools her children, I am constantly all throughout my day thinking, how are mothers getting through their day and not working with flower essences? I am weaving flower essences for my whole family. So my children, my parents, my sister-in-law, my brother, cousins that come over, and then also clients. But I see such a spectrum of how flower essence can impact people, from my dad, who's 80 years old, and it's noticeable when he's working with flower essences. Maybe not so much by him, but everyone in the family. And it's just wild to me, and even my children. I just wrote about this in a newsletter. My son, and him going to his parkour tournament, and him being really anxious about it previously, and then working with a different flower essence this time, and how much confidence he had, and how he just was completely himself. And seeing someone who's returned to themselves is so beautiful.
And the one thing that I want to add is the nature piece, because for me, the why, flower essences, yes, they are a healing modality. They are beautiful medicine of the now, and they are wanting to support us as we move and shift and change and grow. especially in these fast changing times. And part of what we are missing, part of the reason why we are so out of whack, is because we have forgotten our connection to the natural living world. This is like the funny jokes on us kind of thing, because we are the natural living world. It's like the fish swimming around being like, "What's an ocean? I never met one before." It's us, okay? We are part of the natural living world, but our minds and the way that our brain waves and our neural pathways have changed have created a paradigm and a crystallized belief that is shared, very much a worldview outside of our indigenous brothers and sisters, that we are actually separate from nature, and that we not only are we separate from nature, but in some cases that nature is to be feared, nature is to be controlled, nature is to be dominated, or the other shadow at the other end of that polarity is nature needs to be saved. So this big question that we are all sitting with is, how do we reconnect with nature? Because us remembering ourselves as part of nature is actually what is going to bring forward the most healing at a grand scale, is going to help us remember who we are and honestly start acting right. So, because as a whole, as a collective, we are not acting right. And we are all acting quite insane, actually. And so how do we come back into our truth, into our heart, into wholeness? And it's through this reconnection with nature. And I find that flower essences are this beautiful bridge to bring us there. Yes, you can go walking out in the forest, but again, without that intention, without that presence, without that conscious awareness, it's not going to have, if you're running through a forest with your headphones on, listening to a podcast on your phone, snapping photos of all the good looking trees, okay, it's not going to have the desired effect of creating that healing and restoration. And so working with flower essences flood the system with remembrance, with a frequency of truth and heart and light and joy. And so even if the first 3 months of you working with flower essences and the system is going through this bucking of the system, what's this, right? It's on the fritz of what is this law of this joy, right? This is not working. You're going through a purification process so that your truth, your light can come forward and be seen by first yourself and then the world around you. And so this is why flower essences are just so, so important, is because they're bringing us home. They're bringing us home.
Flower essences are this beautiful bridge to connect into nature, into the spirit of nature, which again, what you're really doing is you're connecting into yourself, into your heart, ultimately. I think specifically for people who are living in cities or suburbs, having access to flower essences at least puts this orb energy around you, this mandala prayer of the frequency of nature in your field, especially if you're sensitive. It helps to soften the blow of the power lines or of the congestion of concrete and pavement. And then you just start to see like, oh, there is this whole menagerie right here in my front yard. Even in the suburbs, there's beauty here. There's beauty here. There's beauty everywhere. That's what flower essences do. It allows you to see all of the beauty that's around you, which in essence allows you to see the beauty that's within you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you learned something and maybe are even inspired to explore flower essences for yourself. If you are ready to work with a practitioner, both Alex and I are currently serving flower essence clients. You can find out more about our specific offerings that we have at our respective websites For Alex, that's mygrandmothersflowers.com. mygrandmothersflowers.com. And you'll definitely want to get on her email list because that's when she lets people know when she has openings and when she's offering her seasonal flower essence formulas. To check out my offerings, you can go to my website at diomirarose.com. That's DIOMIRA rose.com and learn all about the courses and one-on-one offerings that I have available. Thank you so much.